How's it going, guys? I'm Dustin with Hard Cruise Racing, and I was originally going to make this video, and then I realized I really had some running to do. So I'm going to talk instead, because I don't need to look at the phone to talk. So if I blank out for a second, because I'm driving and I have more important things to focus on. Alright, so guys, I want to talk about why it's important to let your vehicle warm up, because there's been a lot of misconception lately, and there's been a lot of videos coming out, and a lot of content coming out that says, you don't need to let your vehicle warm up, and it's just a waste of gas, and it doesn't make sense, and all sorts of crap. So I want to talk about it. I want to talk about what it originally was, and what it is now, and why you still should let your vehicle warm up. So let's start with the history of why people really focused on warming their vehicles up. So back in the day, and I'm talking like all the way up through the 80s, up until, I would say all the way up until 96, when OBD2 became a requirement. Vehicles were often controlled by either a very simplistic computer system, often referred to as OBD1, but there was no standard for OBD1, but a very simplistic computer system, or carbed. Now in these systems, they're very finicky in the sense of, well, if you cold start it, or depending the ambient temperature outside, it might not run efficiently. So with the release of OBD2, and as computers became more focused, I guess you could say, auto manufacturers started being able to control emissions. And a lot of what they did was through what's called an O2 sensor, or an oxygen sensor, is reading the oxygen levels in your exhaust. So what these O2 sensors do is, if they're seeing too much oxygen, compared to normal levels, they'll add a little more fuel to your engine. Or if they're seeing too much fuel, excess after the engine in your exhaust, they'll take a little fuel away. And this is what's controlling your what's called a rich or lean fuel mixture. Now this is essential in modern cars, okay? Your O2 sensors control everything. This is what's going to change what your fuel ratio is at different elevations, at different temperatures. The air being pulled in, if you're in a freezing climate, or just say that 32 degrees, is very different as far as density wise than the air that you're pulling in at, say, 95 degrees. So your vehicle needs to be able to make those adjustments. This is done through your O2 sensors. Now, on older vehicles, once the engine begins to heat up, and once it becomes what's known as operating temperature, it kind of controls, to a point, the intake air temperature, because air comes in and it's just surrounded by hot metal, so it's able to at least warm it up to a point. So you're going to get a more consistent burn. That's reason one. Reason two is because of oiling. So oil in your engine changes viscosities, or changes the flow rate, or how liquid it is, depending on temperature. This is why we have like 5W20s. The 5W, or the 5 winter, is what your viscosity is at a low or freezing temperature, and your 20 is what it is at a engine operating temperature, or 200 and so odd degrees. So there's a difference between there. This means that an engine needs to be built to withstand 5 weight oils and 20 weight oils, depending on the temperature differences. That's why you have your 5W20s. Now, in the old days, where machining and these fine measurements weren't necessarily the primary focus in mass production, because mass production will always lead to a decrease in quality. So when vehicles are mass produced, they're not consistent, they're not as accurate. So almost always wanted to warm up that oil and make it a little more viscous, so it was able to travel into the bearings, so that way it was able to get through all the passages. And not to mention, at the time, oils, the technology for oils, were very, very different. They didn't understand them as much. Not necessarily didn't understand them, but they were all using crude oils, okay? This is your conventional motor oils that you still see on the shelf today. They're made from crude oils, and they're decent for oiling, but there's a reason that they get changed out at less than half the mileage. Now your synthetics, your full synthetics, or your synthetic blends, those are created in a lab. This means that it is a focused product, either highly refined or created to meet the exact needs that your car has, okay? Cleaning and, lubrication and coating a product and all of this. So again, your synthetic oils, they're produced in a lab. They're a very specialized product, and this is why they cost more. Okay, so don't be surprised by the cost, but they also last longer. So weigh your pros and cons here. Do you want a product that protects your engine better? Do you want a product that lasts longer? And then you pay a little more on the cost. You know, every time I've done the math, it adds up to actually costing less by the time you do your oil changes, you know, within that recommended time period. So these are the two reasons that it was essential to warm up your engine when you're driving an older car, you know, a classic, or really any car up through the 80s and 90s. And then technology kind of took off on the automotive industry due to EPA requirements. Okay, there was a demand from consumers for a more fuel efficient car. We want something that lasts a long time. We want something that's more fuel efficient. We want something that meets safety standards, right? We don't want an unsafe car. So auto manufacturers really had to take a step in, and this is where vehicles started to get more and more expensive. Now I do some contract work for some of the Toyota companies, dealerships, and I can tell you right now, safety standards and performance are nothing like they used to be. Okay, you know, the cars that I have are usually like 06, you know, 05 kind of time frames where I really like cars from, and the safety between the two, the differences is just night and day. Toyota now, I'm only speaking for Toyota because, you know, that's who I'm doing a lot of research for right now. What they're doing as far as safety and standards is just next level. Okay, driving assists, and you know, if a vehicle gets in a crash, just how well it holds up, it's next level. Even our 21 Bronco Sport Badlands, which we're in right now, we got it with a big focus on safety. We wanted something to overland in. Performance and safety was everything. We're talking about a little 2.0 with a turbo and all-wheel drive lockers, and, you know, a bunch of different tune presets and all sorts of things in a brand new car. Now a lot of people will say it's not really for off-road. Yeah, nothing DOT approved coming from the manufacturer is going to be designed for off-road use. That wouldn't be within the DOT standards. Even a new Jeep, you buy one, you still throw 20 grand at it before it's considered an off-road rig. I'm getting sidetracked, okay? So in a modern vehicle, you don't have these same issues, okay? You're not warming it up for the same reasons. But why you are warming it up is because of something called open loop and closed loop. And it has to do with your vehicle's tuning. So you remember the O2 sensors we talked about before that I said are essential in a new vehicle for the tuning, or to maintain everything, or to keep it, you know, at that precise fuel levels, to keep your engine safe, keep your vehicle safe, give you good fuel economy, give you good performance. So that only happens once your vehicle is warmed. When you first start your vehicle, it's what's called open loop. Okay, it's not actually able to read and maintain itself, so it goes off of just a base map tuning. Okay, it's just a basic tune that was put into your vehicle to allow it to idle, and then if you decided to take off, it wouldn't necessarily damage the vehicle, but it's just considered it's a base tune. And this is called open loop. Okay, this is why when you get in some vehicles and you fire them up and you take off real fast, especially a little bit older ones, you might get backfiring, and you might get some cool sounds. It might sound a little more raspy. It's because your tune's not correct at that time. Okay, but once everything warms up and your vehicle gets up to operating temperature, and your O2 sensors heat up, and so on and so forth, you go into what's called closed loop. This is where your O2 sensors are monitoring your fuel ratios after the burn. This is where your intake sensors are monitoring air temperatures and air flows. This is where your vehicle is really able to maintain itself. Okay, so warming up your vehicle now is not for the same reasons that you warmed up your vehicle 20 years ago. It's not for oil viscosities. It's not for air intake and operating temperatures necessarily, but it is for your vehicle's tune. Okay, so you jump in a vehicle and you fire it up, and you absolutely put your foot to the floor taking off. First off, you're in open loop, so it's just going to dump fuel. It doesn't care about anything else. And then you might get inconsistent temperatures because you're just causing a ton of detonation, a ton of mini explosions, which is ultimately what you have when you're driving, is mini explosions. right at the top of that cylinder, and that spot's going to start to heat up really fast before anything else can heat up. You have what's called thermal expansion, whereas the metals heat up, they expand, and it can become inconsistent. Okay, you want your engine to heat up evenly so everything expands together. So if one part's cold and one part's hot, you have one that's expanding and one that's contracting, and it could cause issues. So that's just another reason why you really want to warm your vehicle up. They say it doesn't make a difference, and that's just outright a lie, okay? They're saying it's just a waste of fuel. No, if you jump in your vehicle and you put your foot to the floor and it dumps a bunch of fuel, and it's not maintaining or reading anything that's happening, and it's just dumping fuel, that is a waste of fuel. That is by definition a waste of fuel, and that's how you cause issues. So you don't have to let your vehicle warm up for very long. It's about 60 seconds, give or take. That just means when you get in your car, start it, then get everything situated. Sit down in your seat, put your seatbelt on, take your time, and then take off, and you'll be fine. But like when I just jumped in the car, and the reason I decided to just make the video now is I actually jumped in the car and I took off a little quick. And I could feel the difference. I could feel the difference in my tune. It was running a little rough. And I realized that I've seen this question on some Bronco Sport forums already, where people say that their vehicle's running a little rough, but then it evens out after a few minutes. It's because you're driving it in open loop. You're driving it without it actually maintaining or reading itself, and then you're just dumping fuel. So I'm Dustin with Hard Cruise Racing. I'm going to do more videos like this because I want to inform more people out there about your vehicle, because there is a big disconnect right now where people don't understand, rightfully so, they don't understand all the technology in your vehicle, and then it's doing something strange or weird, and no one's there to explain it to you, and then there's a bunch of really, really bad information being shared in the comments. Really bad. Okay? And it's kind of terrible, because I've seen questions that are like standard for vehicles. I've seen questions that are standard for vehicles, like the little indent you have on your tires from manufacturing, and people then go in the comments and say, that tire is trash and you need to take it back to the manufacturer right now and they need to replace all of them. And I'm like, no, that's part of the manufacturing, and it's terrible, okay? It's terrible that people are just throwing information out there even if they themselves don't know, or they themselves have been misinformed. Technology changes. Unless you have a reason to keep up to date with automotive technology, you're not going to. Your vehicles now have hundreds and hundreds of sensors in it, monitoring everything from the inside air temperature in the air, to looking at your face to see if you're falling asleep, to if somebody's coming up alongside you. You know how many sensors it takes for them to accurately say you're driving within your lane and somebody's next to you and that's not a tree, and all sorts of stuff like that? It takes a lot. So I'm Dustin with Hard Cruise Racing. I'll be sharing more information as time goes on, so stay around and check stuff out. Most importantly, get out there and explore. Get out there and explore and have a good day. I'm talking like you. Look at the camera. Pretend like you're talking to the camera. Have a good day.